Us. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Let's turn that up. Sensei Claudia, us. Rochelle, Torbjörn, us. Good to see you. Frederick. Let me know when those logbooks arrive too, Frederick. So today I thought I'd read a little more. It may seem that I'm repeating myself, but I remember once Solsai said he'll keep repeating himself until he thinks it's not necessary anymore. He'll just keep repeating himself. Once but I think, Torbjörn, like my jacket? My favorite jacket right now, Torbjörn, I tell you, it's getting cold. You know, where I'm going to be tomorrow, they say it's going to be -1 degree. So I'm glad I've got this jacket. Us, Daniel, Paul in Germany, good to see you all. Look, I know that sometimes I repeat myself, but, it's like basics. You do it over and over and over until you get it right, and then you keep doing it anyway. Us, Mike, us, good to see you from Florida, and Rob and Glenn, nice to see you, man. So today I'm going to go over a few things, but especially in relation to the session I did on Monday, where we did a little bit on transitioning through the ranges into range 4 and then takedowns into range 5. Okay, so I think this whole concept of the ranges has never really been spoken about in Kyokushin that much, but I think it's really, really very important, and I think it's a key to big changes coming up in the future with Kyokushin. So that's why I want to go over it. Now, today I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the concept of timing and rhythm, and then from there, I'm going to talk about BALD-BRATS, so the acronym BALD-BRATS, and from there, the 5 ranges, okay? And I think it's well worth repeating itself. So we'll see how we go with time. I'll try and keep it down to an hour today. Kenneth from Melbourne. Marco, good to see you, man. So I might get started straight away. Now, don't forget, if you have any input at any stage, please do so. Us, Paddy, good to see you, man. Hope you're safe down there. But please, I've had 3 more new Patreon members join. So to the Patreon family, thank you very much. It's what is making all the difference in the world. And I've got a few things coming up right now, which there's a lot going on, but it's the Patreon support from month to month that is making all the difference. That's going to help me get the books out and get everything ready. So thank you very much. If you're not part of the Patreon family, don't be shy. I'd love you to be a part of the family. And also, if you're not a subscriber, please click on the subscription button and the notifications, and we'll go from there. Us, Paul, good to see you. Okay, so let me read. This is from my Kyokushin Karate Budo Blueprint. It's the book that I'm planning on bringing out in March next year. And rhythm. Masayama pointed out that waza no kankyu, the tempo of technique, is one of the primary keys of movement in any exchange. As Musashi said, there is timing in everything. There is nothing that exists apart from timing, nature, life, relationships, health, music, comedy, liberation. And there is timing in the mastery of technique. Have you ever been sparring and almost without effort, your opponent scores a clean head kick or drops you with a well-timed snap kick to the body? It is the timing of the technique that makes that happen. Timing is more important than flexibility, more important than perfect technique. I'm sorry I digress all the time. Hey, Raj, good to see you, man. Namaste. I digress. When I wrote that, have you ever been sparring and they scores a clean head kick or drops you the world, I wrote that specifically about a memory I had. I was, many years ago, I used to do a lot of one-on-one training with Matsui, Shokei Matsui, who's the head of IKO 1. And he was training for his fourth dan or fifth dan, can't remember which. But what we would do is we'd go running together, and I was a pretty solid runner, but he always used to surprise me because for me it was like a little bit of fartlek. We'd speed, slow, hit the hills, sprint up, come down, hit the hills, sprint up, come down. But Matsui, I swear, would just get more and more steady and faster and stronger. And without fail, every time we go for a run, it was almost like towards the end of it, even though I'd kind of run slower than what I felt comfortable in the early part, towards the end of the run, I'd really have to put the pressure on to keep up. And then we'd go to the Hombu Chikaikai, which is the underground change room at Hombu, and we'd spar, and we'd do some sparring together. And I remember he'd had a little bit of a break, and he was just coming back after this break. And so we'd spar away, and he was a little bit, you know, if you don't spar for a couple of years, your timing's out and everything. And he was a little bit disappointed that his speed and timing wasn't what it used to be. So he actually said, you know what, I don't know, I just don't seem to have the speed anymore. And of course, you know, he was my friend, and I'm trying to train with him and encourage him. So I said, no, don't worry about it. You know, you're Matsui, the timing, it'll all come back and your speed will come back. And then in the next second, I'm sparring, and out of nowhere, and I'm watching, I'm aware I'm sparring Matsui. What else am I going to do? And I'm aware, and then just out of the blue, I just go, and I look, and I swear he hadn't moved a muscle. And he looked at me and smiled and said, maybe I've still got a little bit of speed and timing left. And he'd done the most beautiful roundhouse kick off his front leg, and he just timed it, because what he used to do, he'd drop, he'd come up and down. And then as he'd drop, you would start to get into the rhythm and drop with him. And as I dropped, that's when he brought the kick up. It was just stunning timing. So anyway, I wrote that sentence, you know, have you ever been sparring almost without effort, your opponent scores a clean head kick? Well, I wrote that specifically about that one occasion that I had sparring with Matsui. It is the timing of the technique that makes that happen. Timing is more important than flexibility, more important than perfect technique. With timing, all the forces of leverage combine to make even a mediocre technique right. In training with Sosai, he once said that there is only one correct way to do a technique perfectly. But if what you do knocks them out, that's the right way. That's timing. If you are drilling repetition, you are primarily drilling rhythm and timing. You are better off drilling the timing to make a single technique work right in a number of situations than drilling a number of techniques for different situations. And this is what we were looking at on Monday too, trying to simplify the range of techniques so that you work in terms of principles. And once you get the principle right, you can apply that principle into a multiple of situations. There is timing. Where are we? Understand the principles underlying the application of a technique and work hard to master the timing. Timing is a primary principle in all skill. The word musashi, used in his original text, and I'm referring to the Book of Five Rings, that has been translated to timing is hyoshi. Hyoshi. Where's my iPad? I'll write that for you in case there's any scholars out there. Hyoshi. I'm just going to open up my the usual, my little Zen Brush app. I don't get paid for them, but what I'll do when it opens is open it now. Okay. So hyoshi is the word that Musashi uses, and it's often translated as, that's, where are we? That's hyoshi. Let me do it in a thicker face. What's going on here? I'm going to increase the size a little bit, rub that out. Okay. There you go. That's hyoshi. All right. Now the word hyoshi is the word Musashi used in his 5 rings that has been translated to timing. This more accurately refers to rhythm or tempo. So in a nutshell, I don't know if I even mentioned it later on, I can't remember, but in a nutshell, I always say that rhythm is the timing within yourself, and timing is the rhythm between you and an opponent. So your technique, you have to develop the rhythm, having all the parts of the body in the right place at the right time. But timing is how you interact with someone during your confrontation. Timing and rhythm are inseparable. They only exist in the presence of each other. There is timing in the mastery of a skill and timing in its application. In mastering an individual skill, you are primarily working on finding the rhythm. Start by relaxing and ensuring that all the body parts are in the right place at the right time. Then find the rhythm of the movement. Slowly at first, so you can process it easier, gradually increasing the speed as you carefully maintain that rhythm. Gradually, you'll reach full explosive speed with good rhythm and balance, so your technique maintains its form even under pressure. This is the same with any activity, learning to write, kick a football, dancing, and running. You begin very slowly, so you find the proper rhythm of the movement and gradually increase the speed as required without losing that rhythm. When we look at a fighter and comment that he moves well and has good technique, we are primarily referring to his sense of rhythm and timing. In the original Japanese version of the Book of 5 Rings, Musashi also uses the word choshi, which when discussing rhythm and timing. In Japanese, when describing someone's mood, manner, condition, and so on, you can say his choshi is good. In one sense, we are saying that the rhythms within and without are in tune and harmonious. That is how important rhythm and timing are. Musashi says there is timing in the whole life of a warrior, in his thriving and declining, in his harmony and discourse. I'll write that word choshi. So in common Japanese day-to-day use, that word choshi is actually really useful. You know, you can say, choshi desu ne. So it's like it's saying, you're moving well today. So I'll see if I can write choshi. I've kind of squeezed it up a bit here. So that's the kanji for choshi, if you're studying Japanese. That's choshi, which Musashi also uses in his book, and that often we use Japanese to say someone's moving well. You watch a tournament, and you know a fighter's moving well. You say, his choshi is really good. Timing, as opposed to rhythm, is more concerned with the flow of technique between you and your opponent. As you move, you gauge your opponent's movement and skill, timing your attack to maximize the impact and minimize his ability to defend and counter. There is timing in finding the correct mai distance between you and your opponent, as well as the optimizing the effectiveness of your strikes. In addition, good timing is good efficiency. In a tournament, you set out to overcome your opponent in various ways. One of the easiest ways is if your opponent's fitness preparation is poor, which leads to a loss of his timing and rhythm. Good fitness training allows for good timing and rhythm, especially fitness training that is specific to karate. Always build a solid base of general fitness and conditioning, but be sure to include very specific fitness training as a tournament gets closer. That means more karate-specific movements, then that improves fitness as well as timing and rhythm. This book, this isn't Budo Karate. This I'm reading from Budo Blueprint, which is a training book. So that's why I address that training aspect of it. And I've got a quote there from Musashi: "You win in battles with the timing in the void, born of the timing of cunning, by knowing the enemy's timing and thus using a timing which the enemy does not expect." And also later on in the Book of Five Rings, Musashi actually says all the 5 books are chiefly concerned with timing. So that timing is very important. That was just a little section in the book where I spoke about how important it is to have timing in everything you do. Now, I'm going to keep going, and this section is BALD-BRATS. Okay, so as you know, I use a lot of acronyms because it helps my old brain remember things. So BALD-BRATS, that's the acronym that this next section describes. In daily practice, always aim for calmness, speed, and accurate application of techniques. That's a quote from Asayama. BALD-BRATS. This is an acronym I created that helps students focus on core training habits. BRATS is in oneself. That is, describes key movement principles to be mastered. BALD is outside of oneself, describing concepts important when interacting with a training partner. Combined, BALD-BRATS gives a precise and clear foundation of movement in Kumite. BRATS: balance, relaxation, accuracy, timing, and speed. These, combined with footwork, are the keys to all movement and training to develop optimal technique. You should return here regularly, daily, if possible. Once again, I'm sorry, this book is still in progress. If there is a problem with your technique, chances are very high that it will be in one of these areas. Even a subtle adjustment of any one of these factors can change the whole complexion of your technique flow. BRATS is in you. Balance is having the body weight in the right place for each technique. It begins with a good default position. A powerful technique requires dynamic balance, where the body weight is just right to optimize the effects of the technique without overreaching. Relaxation primarily refers to relaxation in the shoulders so that the energy is focused in the Tandan area in the lower abdomen. Sosai said that 90% of all technical problems can be related to excessive tension in the shoulders. Accuracy refers to the exactness of your body shape in the technique, having all the parts of the body in the right place at the right time, as well as the correct tension and relaxation. This begins by mastering the stances and techniques in basics. Targeting techniques accurately presupposes a knowledge of Kyusho, the vulnerable nerve points of the body. So accuracy is usually, and fair enough, accuracy usually describes having pinpoint accuracy to where you're hitting. So we don't say hit him on the face, we say hit him on the chin. Hit him on the pimple of the chin. Hit him on the whitehead and the pimple of the chin. Hit him on the hair growing out of the middle of the whitehead, the middle of the pimple in the middle of the chin. Hit them on the split end of the hair growing out of the whitehead and the pimple in the middle of the chin, and that way if you miss the split hair, you hit the pimple. Miss the pimple, you hit the chin. Miss the chin, you hit the face. But if you just say, I'm just going to aim for the face, you miss the face, you miss everything. So accuracy in that respect is very important. But in BRATS, accuracy refers to being exactly accurate about how your body shape and position in the technique should be. That's really important. Timing, as we talked about, timing is within oneself interchangeable with rhythm. It refers to the timing and rhythm of movement that comes from the entire body working in coordination to optimize power. Timing is the rhythm of making sure all the parts of the body are in the right place at the right time. I think I've said that 4 or 5 times, but it's so valuable to simply know. You break down. Remember, we've been through this in training. If I want to break down, say, the upper block, I break it 1, 2, 3. So you break it down into bits, and each of those bits has an exact, accurate shape that you need to aim for. Speed is self-explanatory and is built up gradually without losing any of the other keys. It is trained after the other keys are in place. If you try to build your speed too early, all the other keys can be missed. The danger there, though, is a couple of points, and I've got it written elsewhere in the book. The danger is it's very easy in basics to get into the rhythm. You know, you're punching out 30 basic techniques and you do 30 or 50 or 100. And so the rhythm is everything. But when you go into that rhythm, you start to slow down. You're actually training the slow twitch fibers. So over time, you're actually literally training to be slower. But the best thing to do is treat it like what I say, it's like an ECG readout. So instead of making your timing like, see this? I don't know if you can see that. Often what people do is they go, boom, and they'll just do this rhythm like this to each count. It's bang, E, bang, son. But what you should be doing, I'll do it in red so you can see, what you should be doing is 0 to 100, slow. It's bang, slow, E, bang, son, bang, G, bang. So your rhythm is not unlike it, but the demand you place upon it by focusing on the speed in each individual technique is very different. It's really important, and especially as we get a little older, we don't even realize that we don't have anyone, especially, you know, if you're the king in your own little castle, no one tells you what to do. If I have really bad technique in my dojo, no one's going to say, Cameron, geez, you're getting a bit slack in your old age. They're just not going to do that. So I have to ask them. I'll say to my student, Ben, who's the assistant instructor, I'll say, Ben, just keep an eye on me today. I'm starting to feel like this technique's wrong. Okay. And in my head, I think I'm doing it exactly the same as I was when I was 20. And he'll come up and say, well, actually, your shoulders are rounding, your head's down, and you're starting to change your posture. I go, oh, thanks. So one of the best ways to deal with that is, first of all, treat the basics like an ECG. Relax, relax, bang. Relax, relax, bang. Okay, so you're not going, you're actually really slowing down. I mean, really slowing to 0 and then wham, exploding back in again. That's really important. The other thing that you can do, which is really important, is to have someone you trust. They don't even have to be your own rank. They can be a student. Someone you trust to video you, and then just say, look, here's my camera. Can you video me through basics today? Or if you see me doing anything that's a bit funky, can you video it? Because I need to check it out, especially if you've got a grading coming up. That's one of the really important things. Okay, so that speed is really important, but you can't build up the speed unless you build up the balance and the relaxation and the accuracy and the timing. You get all those right, and then add speed, and that's what gives you power. Remember, power is not a somatic. The somatics are speed, strength, cardiovascular endurance, and flexibility. Power isn't one of them. Power is a product generally of speed and strength. And to apply strength and technique, you need relaxation, and you need that balance, and you need the timing to have all the body parts in the right place at the right time. Otherwise, you can't generate that power because you've got antagonistic muscles slowing you down. Okay, so remember that power comes by getting all the other parts in place. Okay, BALD. The BALD part of BALD-BRATS stands for breathing, angles, leverage, and distance. These keys should be thought of in terms of interaction with an opponent. These can also be developed using makiwara, hand mitts held by a training partner, and a punching bag. Oh, and that's the other thing too I wanted to talk about, speed. Well, I guess, Marco, it doesn't make sense because I'm not really a scientific person, but there's only one constant, as they say, and maybe science is changing that, but that constant is the speed of light. So if there's one constant, I think I always use that as an analogy. There's only one constant in karate that makes a lot of difference, and that is speed. All else being equal, the fast man will win. He'll even beat a powerful man if all else is equal. But Marco, speed sounds like it needs to be a digital wave rather than sine waves. You know what? I'm going to have to go and look up that sine waves. I'm not really familiar with them. But the other thing I wanted to mention about speed is Solsai said later in his life that, Rob Wall, Harry, Marco, good to see you, and Gaza, good to see you. Solsai said that he started to have certain doubts about makiwara training if it wasn't done correctly. And this is really important because Solsai is seen as one of the key leaders in the makiwara thing, and even Solsai said, look, he had doubts about makiwara training because he felt that he was very intuitive. A lot of his training, he was doing plyometric training before the word plyometrics was even coined. And he said that he felt intuitively as he was doing his makiwara that it was slowing him down. But he realized that the whole key to his powerful fighting was his speed. And like Bobby Lowe says, and I've addressed elsewhere in the Budo Karate book, he said if there was one thing that people didn't really recognize about Masayama, it was his speed. He was so fast, it was breathtaking, and he wasn't Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee probably weighed 57 kilos. So it's always easier to move something light much faster. But Solsai was an 80-kilogram powerful man. So his speed at that power and body weight and perfect technique was just deadly. Hey, Gaza, yeah, good. Oh, don't worry about being late. Or Tigray, tension in martial arts when they perform their techniques almost as if their body becomes rigid. Rigor mortis is stiff. Yeah, like rigor mortis and stiff cadavers. Oh, it's Brad Henson. Good to see you, man. My good buddy Brad there was one of Australia's greats in his days, and he's still a little bit of a goer. Good to see you, Brad. I'm glad you're here. Nice to see your name. Okay, so let me continue on with the bald part of BALD-BRATS. Solsai, by the way, when Solsai said that he felt over time, intuitively, he felt that the makiwara training was slowing him down, that's when he started to incorporate a lot of skill training that sped him up. And a lot of it seemed like people just think it's funny and they don't use it, but like the bottle cut, candles, punching pieces of paper floating in the air. When you think about that, they're all speed techniques. They require tremendous speed. Breathing, so I'm talking about as well as using ki-eyes at the appropriate times. This also refers to the way you tense the body as you breathe out during an exchange, so you are ready for body shots. The mastery of this takes practice and experience. Angles is using footwork and body motion to keep your opponent in your own crosshairs while staying out of his. This is closely related to dominant head position. And if you've been following along, we talk about, Clarence, good to see you, man. We talk about dominant head position and crosshairs micro adjustments. Every attack has an optimal angle of attack. Leverage refers to the timing of your technique in relation to the opponent's movements. Leverage the power in your technique by creating a collision of forces. It also refers to timing the technique with the opponent's breathing to hit when his body is least prepared for the impact. So remember we talked about the the three major principles of kata training: timing of technique, breath control, and points of power stress. And I referred to also the translation by Tsutomu Oshima Sensei, in Funakoshi's book, Karate do Kyohan, the master text, where he describes Iki no Chosei, or the breath control, as the expansion and contraction of the body. Well, when you think about that, when you breathe in, your body expands. And anyone who's ever been in a tournament will know that you don't have optimal protection when your body is expanding. You have optimal protection when your body is contracting. So that's why timing your technique with the opponent's breathing is so key. And Sosai spent so much time talking about this. It's just watch, observe, watch, bang. And when you time it so that you hit them on the breath in, then you hit them as their body expands, and it's slightly weakened compared to when it's contracting and strong. Distance maximizes the effect of everything you do. The explosiveness and destructive force of any technique counts for absolutely nothing if the distance is wrong. As an illustration, take a sniper rifle. Every sniper rifle has a maximum range as well as an optimal effective range, both affected by the ammunition used. There are online videos of shooters hitting targets at over 4 kilometers, which is crazy. Conceivably, you could stand a meter beyond the rifle's range and watch as the bullet rolls to a stop at your feet, although I wouldn't recommend trying it. That's you, Brad. At the right range, however, the round results in a devastating impact. The same with your technique. At the right range, or the correct range, the perfect technique can result in a seemingly miraculous impact. At the wrong range, even the best technique is useless. The flip side is neutralizing the opponent's attack by moving in or out of the optimal impact range. Position. Get in position. Default position. Dominant head position. Micro adjustments, crosshairs, angles, footwork. These are all aimed at one thing: to get you in the optimal position and give you there and keep you there, so you can leverage everything you do and to take your opponent out of the position, to minimize his ability to do anything of significance to you. If you think about your own experience with fighters of different levels, what is it that makes one fighter tough to beat and another easy to beat? The little things that either keep them in the perfect position or take them out of position. In Kumite, your opponent is aiming to get you in the right place, and you are trying to get your opponent in the right place. Your opponent is aiming to take you away from your perfect place, and you are aiming to take your opponent away from his perfect place. This is why well-drilled basics are so key. They serve to keep you in position and take your opponent out of position. And position can be understood through BALD-BRATS too. You're trained whilst reducing the possibilities of his being able to attack yours. That's a mouthful, but that's really, really a very simple but profound principle you can train around. Remember, another way to look at this is to ask yourself, how would I beat me? That reveals what you do. That reveals what you do that takes you out of optimal position. So I'm just rereading that. That reveals what you do. So when you're asking the question, how would I beat me? That reveals what you do that takes you out of optimal position. Every day at training, you strip yourself down to your most vulnerable so that you can reveal your weaknesses. Then each day's well-planned and well-executed training builds you into a better fighter that you were yesterday. You keep getting better this way, day by day, until you reach a point where you can, as the art of war describes, make yourself invulnerable as you find the vulnerabilities in your opponent. Okay, any comments or questions about that? We keep going. Gee, it's good to see your name there, Brad. Thanks for coming along. Okay, the next section is 5 ranges. If you have comments or questions, put them in. I'll address them whilst I give my feet a little bit of a shuffle because I'm sitting in Cesar here, so my feet are falling to pieces. The 5 ranges, and I quote a samurai maxim: 1 foot in front of the blade, you're in hell. 2 feet forward, and you're in heaven again. Remember, we spoke about that on Monday when we're working on bridging the gap to cross the gap into range 4 so that we can take them down into range 5, and we have to get our head on their chest. If you can get your head on the chest, you neutralize range 1, kicks, 2, punches, 3, headbutts and elbows. That simple principle. Under pressure against a non-compliant opponent, if I can get my head on their chest, do so. Then the main thing, and I'll be honest, the main thing you got to look out for then is fish hooks, eye gouges, things like that. I've been in a situation once where I did get my head on this guy's chest, and he reached over and started to gouge my eye out. So I took his hand off with a cock's comb, and he reached around with the other hand, started to gouge my other. So I had to do it 3 or 4 times to keep. And luckily, if you spend enough time doing kinetic sensitivity training, where you actually train with your eyes closed, well, then it doesn't matter. You don't even need to see the. You don't even need to see what he's doing. You simply feel it. You are the toughest opponent. Well, that's true. You're the only opponent you ever face. All the opponents that face you are just there to help you face yourself. Good point. Good point there, Claudia. Okay, in my interpretation of karate, we have 5 ranges. Now, I know I've spoken about this every single training session, and it's really very important. And for me, it's the center of all my teaching now, because if I'm going to teach kicks or punches or anything, I need to teach the range that it's at, and I need to also teach the range that neutralizes it. So remember, each range, I'll probably talk about that. Let me just read this. I'll get carried away. In my interpretation of karate, we have 5 ranges. Other interpretations may differ, which is fine. For example, when you add guns and handheld weapons, you have more ranges. The flip side is that you have one range that encompasses all possibilities, and any notion of different ranges is simply isolating the various distances for teaching and skill development purposes. The notion of the ranges is also developed, I believe, to facilitate gameplay. In times of peace, the fighting arts would be practiced with rules that were aimed for safety. These rules developed into sports, and isolating different rules to different ranges made creating rules much simpler. Most intelligently developed hand-to-hand fighting systems have a notion of ranges covering all aspects of fighting, even though they may focus on 1 or 2 ranges for their sporting aspect. For example, judo comprises of 3 main principles: nage-waza, throws, katame-waza, grappling, and atemi-waza, strikes. And the mastery of the art requires mastery of all 3. Yet the sporting aspect of judo does not include strikes. Similarly, Sosei taught a much wider range of techniques, different distances that works to bring the art of students is fine. That works to bring the art to students is fine. For our training purposes in the dojo, we focus on 5 ranges of unarmed combat. Here is an explanation of my approach to training the distancing in karate. There are 5 ranges, and a working knowledge of all 5 is necessary for karate mastery. The 5 ranges are kick range, punch range, headbutt elbow, trapping range, stand-up grapple range, ground grapple range. All fighting systems tend to be classified according to the ranges their techniques and training addresses and focuses on, and or the sporting rules they compete under. The classification may vary from fighter to fighter and even match to match. But here are, for example, some approximates. So Olympic Taekwondo, 90% range 1 kicks, 10% range 2 punches. Boxing, 90% range 2 punches, 5% range 3, which is headbutt, elbow range, 5% range 4, which is the stand-up grapple. Kyokushin tournaments, 45% range 1, 50% range 2, 5% range 3. because you can get in and hit elbows, but not many people do. Judo, 75% range 4, stand-up grapple, 25% range 5, ground. Wrestling, 20% range 3, so that's entry, 40% range 4, stand-up grapple, and 40% range 5 on the ground. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 20% range 4, stand-up, 80% range 5. Some guys will even, they'll touch gloves and literally sit down on their butt and scoot towards you. So for them, pretty well 95% of their fighting is range 5 on the ground. But of course, that only works with rules and a referee. In 1995, I described MMA as a combination of the 4 Olympic fighting sports: the kicks of Taekwondo, the punches of boxing, the takedowns and controls of wrestling, and the throws and ground skills of judo. So this was before, essentially, this was before the phrase MMA was coined. I think it was a guy named John Peretti in America who coined MMA. It's a really cool phrase. But before that, it was no holds barred, NHB. And back when I was refereeing the early mixed martial arts fights, they were called NHB, no holds barred. And the public still was a little skeptical. They still weren't used to what was going on. So I described it to try and make it more approachable and more make it more receptive or more receivable to people. I described it as simply a combination of the 4 Olympic fighting sports. So the kicks of Taekwondo, the punches of boxing, the takedowns and controls of wrestling, and the throws and ground skills of judo. It helped people to understand what exactly MMA was trying to do. That covers all ranges. Whilst numerous sources claim to be the originator of the term mixed martial arts, perhaps the strongest claim lies with John Peretti, an early innovator and pioneer of the notion of athletes from different systems competing against each other. And I've got a long footnote there, which I go right into it, where I talk about people like Jean LaBelle fighting against a boxer in 1963, and even in the early days in Masayama in the 50s, and even in the early days in the 15th, 16th century, where you had different martial artists of different weapons challenging each other to test the skill of their weapons at different ranges. Who coined the term first, I'm talking about MMA, is not as important as the effect doing so had on an activity previously known as no holds barred. Well, I just went into that. It legitimized a largely rule-free approach to sport fighting many saw as brutal, and breathed into it an opportunity for acceptance alongside martial arts such as karate and judo, which has spent many decades seeking approval of their sporting forms. All 5 ranges are found in the bunkai of kata. It stands to reason, therefore, that a strong working knowledge of all 5 ranges is necessary to be able to say that you have a clear mastery and understanding of karate. As a young tournament fighter, it is perfectly reasonable to focus just on the skills and ranges of tournaments. As mentioned earlier, all bunkai applications involve 2 main themes: grabs, holds, and strikes, kicks. So you have to know your ranges. After your tournament career is over, if you want to find longevity in your karate training, you have to go deeply into kata and the 5 ranges. The 5 ranges and soul size techniques. Kyokushin also includes many advanced techniques in the closer stand-up grappling and groundwork ranges, although due to the sporting aspect, these are not widely practiced. Many of the kata movements include controls and throws. Soul Size book, This is Karate, includes an entire chapter on ground fighting. A review of the techniques presented in Soul Size 3 main books, What is Karate, This is Karate, and Advanced Karate, and the ranges to which the techniques belong is found in Table 1. And I have a table here somewhere, but I think it's actually lost in the formatting. But I'll cover what it covers. Hours could be spent discussing these data. The techniques and context in the books And I'm just actually, whilst I'm doing this, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a Google search on my computer, and I may be able to find the ranges. Maybe not. Let me keep going. The techniques and context in the books that's of soil size are open to interpretation, as are what constitutes different techniques per se. For example, is a knee kick done from close range without a control hold different to a knee kick thrown whilst controlling the opponent with a shoulder lock? Nevertheless, the numbers are interesting. Here are some observations. If the books are seen to present techniques progressively, with what is karate being the most basic introduction for beginners, this is karate going into somewhat more depth, and advanced karate presenting the most advanced techniques, then the data shows that as the student advances, so should his knowledge and understanding of techniques in all ranges, especially the stand-up grappling and throwing techniques for range 4. Note that in advanced karate, the number of new range 1, that's kicks, 2 punches, and 3 kicks and strikes presented is minimal, whilst the number of new range 4 techniques introduced is nearly double the range of 1, 2, and 3 techniques introduced in all 3 books combined. That's significant. So what I mean by that is range 4, stand-up grapple techniques. The number of techniques also introduces in range 4 stand-up grapple in advanced karate is more than double the number of range 1, 2, and 3 kicks, punches, and headbutt elbow techniques in advanced karate, what is karate, and this is karate, all combined. And I think that's a significant statistic. 2, although Kyokushin is best known for its tournament fighting, primarily ranges 1 and 2, with no head punches allowed, when illegal techniques are included, most techniques demonstrated in the books would not be permitted in tournaments. So if your training is solely for tournaments, you're only partially addressing the art. That is okay if your focus in your youth is 100% on tournaments. But as you continue in training, it is important to add a knowledge of the techniques of all ranges. All 3 books introduced more techniques in range 4, the range of stand-up grappling and throws, than any other range. In advanced karate, the number of techniques in range 4 and range 5, groundwork, is more than double the number of kicks and strikes. Where are we? Kicks. More than double the total number of kicks and strikes of the first 3 ranges combined. Of the total number of techniques introduced in all 3 books, 117, 76 or 65%, nearly 2/3, are in range 4 and 5. Well, I think that's a significant statistic. If you're not actually spending time understanding what it feels like to be range 4 and 5, well, then you're only really approaching your karate in terms of 1/3 of the total. The conclusion is that stand-up grappling, locks, wrist locks, throws, and techniques represent a significant of the techniques of Kyokushin. 5, the range 4 techniques that begin with a hold require an ability to transition from the outside ranges to the inside ranges smoothly, safely, and rapidly. Sosai mentions the need for this rapid transition numerous times in his books. So this is a quote from Sosai. In general, karate is performed from a stand-up position, and the fight is decided by a strike or a kick before either combatant has been pinned to the floor. If, for instance, the karateka finds himself pinned down, there are ways to extricate himself, and in actual combat, these may very well be vital. After all, it is by no means certain that in real life an opponent is going to employ strict karate methods. He may very well attack with a judo or wrestling tactic. And when he does, it is necessary for the karateka to know how to deal with him. Well, that's straight from Masayama. If you're not really focusing at least a little on how to deal with what it takes to be grappled, don't kid yourself. Don't think that because you've been doing karate for 30 years, you have the answers to range 4 and 5. If anything, it's the opposite. You've lulled yourself into a totally false sense of realization, of reality, that the fact of the matter is, I would say that someone who has spent 6 months in range 4 and 5, provided they can bridge the gap past someone who has spent 20 years in range 1 and 2, they would, with their 6 months, overcome someone with 20 years almost within a couple of minutes. Before the term MMA used in Brazil, they refer to as vale tudo. Yeah, that's right. Or luta livre. Yeah, that's right. Correct. That's true, Tigre. Sensei. Long range, mid range, and close range in boxing principle. Can karate punches be divided and such within the punching? Well, yes, I think they can. You have the long ranges, which we call punches, and you have the short ranges, which we call strikes, because they're more concussive. The long range is all about generating that drive-through power, so that's why they're called a punch. Whereas the short range are all about bang, exploding, the agouchi, the uraken. They're uchi, they're strikes. They're all about impact, time, impulse, time on impact. Good point, Sensei Claudio. I'm nearly finished, guys. I'm going to try and finish by 4 today. Range change, transitions. It is one thing to have a number of skills across the ranges and another to be able to transition from range to range to apply them in a way that prevents your opponent from attacking well. Range transition is mastery of distance control. By transitioning out of a fighter's strong range, you can completely neutralize his attacks. And you know that if you're fighting a strong kicker, simply move into grappling range and you completely neutralize their kicks. By transitioning out of a fighter's stronger ranges, you can completely neutralize his attacks. Changing ranges is taking your opponent away from where he is comfortable into a range where he is not, so you can optimize your own attacks. One of the best examples of how range transition can nullify strong fighters' attacks is the MMA bout on 28th of August 2010 between Randy Couture and James Lights Out Toney. Toney was one of the most successful boxers of the modern era, holding world titles in 3 weight classes. In a career over 90 bouts, Toney had 77 wins, 47 by knockout, holding titles in 5 weight divisions. He could hit and hit hard. He commented before the Couture bout that this princess had never faced anyone who could hit as hard as he could. And that was probably true. Even Randy said that in a boxing match, there is no doubt Toney would be victorious. But this wasn't boxing, or a match limited to boxing's punching range. After less than 20 seconds of getting a feel of the distance, the very first exchange of the bout saw Couture transition from outside Toney's punch range to the ground, taking Toney down with a classic low single leg shot. If you remind me on Monday, on next training session, I'll show you. By the way, this weekend, I'll be away all week. I don't know that I'll be able to, I don't know that you'll be able to, that I'll be able to get to do a live stream on Monday, I'm sorry, because I'll be 2,000 kilometers out west. I'm going to a place called Longreach. So if you know, if you're Australian, you'll know where Longreach is. It's about 100 miles west of the Black Storm. And if you're not from Australia, you'll know where. And right now they're having a dust storm, and at the best of times, there's no internet reception. So I won't be online on Monday. My apologies. Sensei Claudio Longo. Brad, nice wake up for you and me when we got to train with Larry in the early 90s. Indeed. See, Brad Hansen there. You can see that name, Brad Hansen. We go back to our teen years. He actually, I fought Brad as part of my 40-man kumite for my showdown back in 1981. I took my time to get my showdown. But anyway, Brad and I used to get together in Sydney in the early 90s, and we'd actually go and train. I met a fellow named Larry Papadopoulos, who became a very good buddy, and I actually cornered Larry for some shoot boxing fights in Japan. Shuto, not shoot boxing, Shuto fights in Japan. But Brad and I used to get along and train together. And he has very good memories, and I do too, of some of those really early training sessions where you had Kyokushin guys who knew nothing. And 2 things happened. They knew nothing and went, wow, I know nothing, I need to train. Or they knew nothing and went, wow, I know nothing, I'll pretend it doesn't exist and I'll never do anything about it. I'll just go back to my little comfortable zone. Rochelle tonight. So I was like, oh, good on you, Rochelle. You're always very kind. Sven Jornsson, good lesson about range of strike. Yeah, thanks. Good on you. Mike, your earlier mention of power. Many believe that push-ups in the dojo are adequate to developing strength, ignore strength training, such as weightlifting. Well, yeah, but it all comes down to, push-ups will give you muscular endurance at a certain angle, which is that. That'll give you muscular endurance and some strength. But power is a product of strength and speed. So push-ups really almost could limit. If all you do is push-ups, unless you do speed work, like Mike says, you need to do other strength training and so on. Weightlifting, and weightlifting done correctly is very important so that it actually encourages speed as well as strength. Okay, we're talking about Randy fighting James Toney. So 20 seconds into the round, Couture transitioned from outside Toney's punch range to the ground, taking Toney down with a classic low single leg shot, a version of which can be found in Soul Size Advanced Karate, would you believe, and straight to the mount. From there, it was total domination by Couture, and the bout soon ended with an arm triangle, which is where you wrap around here and get the choke, known as katagatame. Toney had no answers once the match went to the ground. Remember that. Punching power depends on your connection to the ground. But if your feet have no connection to the ground, it's very hard to develop punching power. He didn't land a single punch. This is one of the best punches boxing's ever seen. Fought Randy, he didn't land a single punch. He didn't get the chance. Had he landed a punch, things may have been different, but we'll never know, and Randy had no intention of testing his jaws against lights out Toney. That was his nickname. I had trained a lot with Couture and his coach, training partner at the time, Rico Ciparelli, and I can remember actually times building up to that fight. Their fight strategy was simple, and I was talking to Rico one day, building up to the James Toney fight, and Rico actually almost giggled, and they said, it's like, really, do they want us to stand and trade punches with one of the best punchers in the world? Their strategy was simply drop in, take him down, get on top and punch him out. But they didn't even have to punch him out. Toney put his arm up, and Randy Couture was able to get the arm in choke. And I remember watching it thinking, this is exactly as Randy and his coach Rico said would go. Their strategy became the perfect tactic for that fight. The fight panned out exactly as Couture had prepared and trained for. One martial arts great I feel privileged to call a friend is Judo Gene LaBelle. Uncle Gene, as many know him, once asked me, how would you beat Mike Tyson? I thought for a while and said, I'm not sure how. Uncle Gene said, badminton, tennis, any way you like, just don't try and beat him at boxing. That's a perfect lesson in taking a fighter outside of his range of expertise. It's important to an important key to understanding the 5 ranges of this. Each range trumps the range before it. To neutralize range 1, kicking range, moving range 2, punching range. A boxer who has been hit hard will move in closer to the trapping range and control his opponent's arms to neutralize the punches. A judo player will neutralize a throw and go to the ground with newaza. An MMA fighter who has been hit hard enough to be flash knocked out will often recover enough the instant they hit the mat and quickly take the opponent's leg and protect themselves for the few seconds it takes the head to clear. So in other words, they get hit, they'll go in and they'll just wrap their head and arms and everything around the legs until their head clears enough for them to go back to their own range. And to neutralize the ground fighter, you create space to escape and, in a realistic situation, kick the ground fighter hard. The circle is complete. So each range trumps a range before it. And if you want to trump the ground range, you have to get out of that range and go back to your stand-up range. By changing the range, you change the attack's effectiveness. The whole concept of transitioning from one range to another can be simply called range change. The timing of the change from one range to the next can be subtle and smooth or explosive and fast. Either way, the purpose is one. addressing the need to be able to freely move your body to a more controlled place from where you can either defend yourself safely or attack your opponent with leveraged optimal force. If your training doesn't address smooth transition between all 5 ranges, you can't realistically regard yourself as a complete fighter. And facing an opponent whose specialty lies in ranges you're unfamiliar with can and most likely will lead to disaster. Range change is 3-dimensional. To transition skillfully between ranges, you add angles and timing to optimize leverage and gain dominant control of the aggression. Distance, angles, and leverage. You get those and you have the fight game mastered. And there's also on the ground, the main thing I teach my students on the ground is don't look for the finish. Don't look for the armbar or the choke. What you're looking for is to be politically correct. This is just a little bit of a joke. It's all about PC, political correctness. But PC actually equals pressure, and I'm writing it down for you, control. If on the ground you do nothing more than constantly aim to maintain pressure and control, you will win the match. The whole objective of groundwork is to neutralize pressure and regain control from an uncontrolled position. The first UFC 90, it was actually 94, I think. Royce Gracie also defeated world champion, in his first opponent. The boxer had never been to the ground. Yeah, of course, they go. And that happens all the time, Tigray. When I get on the ground with someone that I know hasn't done a lot of groundwork, quite literally, I'll just put pressure in certain places, and the claustrophobia is mind-blowing. That's one of the best, easiest ways to beat someone on the ground. Thanks for giving it a take. Good on you. I really like the idea. Yes, good. Pressure and control. Mike, one of the early requirements of Shodan was to bench press your body weight as many times as your age. Well, there you go. You want to get that body weight out of the way before you're about 15. Because as I get older, my weight gets older and my age gets... So these days I'll be bench pressing 90 Ks about 62 times. Nah, don't think so. That's so cool. Okay, look, I have a lot more there, but I'm actually going to wind it up there because this section, I might even come back to it at another time. I just love this whole section, and it's really, really valuable. And what I've got is a step-by-step way to develop effective defensive ability at all the ranges and allow you to transition those in and out of those ranges. And I've got a really useful step-by-step process that's 11 steps long. But anyway, let me just not deal with that right now. I'm going to wind it up there. See if you got any questions or comments, and we'll wind it up from there. And please forgive me. I'm just going to unwrap my legs. I've been sitting in Caesar for an hour, and they're literally asleep. Oh, man, I'm feeling my foot. I could get a knife and stab my foot right now, and I wouldn't feel a thing because they're dead from the Caesar. Good. Thank you, Mike. Good on you, Daniel. I need to get a logbook to you too, Daniel. I'm stretching my legs and I'm conscious of my feet. But listen, thank you for joining in. I hope you enjoyed that. Please remember, on Monday, I'll be at Longreach. And I love Longreach because Longreach is where Qantas started. And for those who are overseas, you may know that Qantas, the airline Qantas, is actually an acronym for the Queensland and Northern Territory Aerial Service. It was a country aerial service based in Longreach, would you believe? So I'm going out to Longreach to see the Qantas Museum. They even have the beautiful Wanala Dreaming. Look that up. This started a whole trend around the world. Wanala Dreaming was a 747 that Qantas painted with traditional Aboriginal motifs. And it started a trend around the world of airline companies actually painting their aircraft in really funky designs and so on. So, and it all started with that aircraft, Wanala Dreaming. Look it up. You'll enjoy it. Rebecca, hello. Us, thank you. Harry, good on you, man. Leo. Yes, it's really, really important, Leo, because the older you get, the slower you get. There's no doubt about it. So transitioning in and out of ranges is everything. That's true. Good point. Thanks, Frederick. Good to see you. Harry, Rebecca. Where are you from, Rebecca? Sensei Claudius, thank you. Rob from Tassie, thanks. Good on you. Appreciate that. Torbjörn, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the beautiful jacket. Torbjörn's from the Kvinesdal Karate Club, and this beautiful jacket, which is really very beautiful, they gave to me as a gift last time I was there or the time before, and I wear it on call. Good on you, Rebecca from Auckland. I hope you're safe. Leo, good on you. Paul Kneep aus Deutschland. Gut, danke schön, mein Freund. Sehr interessant. Thank you. Good on you, man. Leo, thanks. Tigray, would you be taking pictures of the Cornish Museum and sharing them? I might do that. Actually, that's a good point. If I can even get a little bit of internet, because I'll be on the road tomorrow and the day after. I'll be driving for 2 days. Good on you, Brad. Good to see you, man. Stay safe from the Good Morning State in Hawaii, Ohio. And Leo, good. Have a good day. Thank you. So I'll try to get a few photos out. I'll take some photos of the museum. Thank you very much. See you all. Speak soon.